General Hospital will reveal Kristina orchestrated her second attempt at revenge against Ava with chilling precision and quiet ruthlessness, this time, leaving no room for error. The failure of her first plan still haunted her. A carefully staged car accident meant to eliminate Ava had gone terribly wrong, injuring Rick and Liz instead. Both of whom had nothing to do with Kristina's personal vendetta. Yet Ava, the intended target, had emerged unscathed. That mistake taught Kristina a bitter lesson, one she would never repeat. From that moment on, she vowed to become more cunning, more calculating. She learned to hide her fury behind layers of false remorse, to shed tears on command whenever Morgan's name was mentioned. And to wear a mask of calm while her hatred boiled underneath. To everyone around her, Kristina appeared to have moved on. In truth, she was lying in wait, like a predator, patiently stalking her prey. The opportunity finally came on a quiet evening, one that seemed unremarkable to most in Port Charles. Ava received an elegant, anonymous invitation to attend a private art exhibition, an exclusive event hosted in her honor, she was told, by a mysterious benefactor impressed by her past work in the art world. Ava, always drawn to the allure of prestige and flattery, saw no reason to question the invitation. She had no idea that Kristina had carefully crafted every detail, the venue, the timing, the guest list that didn't exist, and even the decision to hold it in a gallery long since abandoned, its security system outdated and easy to disable. That night, as Ava stepped inside the darkened exhibit space, she was alone. The moment she crossed the threshold, the lights abruptly cut out. Emergency exits, locked. Phone signal, jammed. The silence was suffocating. In those final moments, whatever Ava saw or realized, it remained a mystery, because she never walked out of that room. Kristina had ensured that every step of the plan unfolded without flaw. No one saw Ava leave. No cameras recorded her final moments. No witnesses heard a thing. 2 days later, Ava's body was discovered buried beneath layers of garbage in a landfill outside of town. It was a gruesome, shocking scene that rocked Port Charles to its core. The town reeled from the news, Sonny was struck silent with grief, Nina collapsed into tears, and Trina refused to believe the truth. Ava, the fierce, controversial, and captivating woman who had survived so many enemies, so many threats, was gone. But amidst the mourning, no one looked toward Kristina. She once again slipped into her role as the grieving bystander, her face pale with sorrow, her voice cracking as she whispered memories of the woman she pretended to mourn. She embraced Sonny at the memorial, cried with Trina, and even offered to help with the arrangements. Her performance was flawless. Not a soul suspected the truth. Inside, however, Kristina felt no grief. Only satisfaction. This was not justice in the eyes of the law. This was vengeance on her terms. Ava had, in Kristina's eyes, escaped accountability too many times, Morgan's death, the custody battles, the devastating accident that cost Kristina her unborn child. Everyone else might have forgotten, might have forgiven. But Kristina had not. Ava had to pay. And now, she had. Unlike her first attempt, this time there were no survivors left to tell the tale, no evidence to trace back to her, no paper trail. No fingerprints. Kristina had erased Ava with the same cold efficiency Ava had once used to erase the lives and futures of others. She had become what she despised, and yet, she felt powerful. The secret was hers alone, a dark triumph carved from years of buried rage. But in a town like Port Charles, secrets don't stay buried forever. And though Ava's body was gone, her shadow still lingered, on those who loved her, on those who feared her, and on the one who destroyed her. Kristina might have won this war, but the cost of victory had only just begun to show. No one even considered Kristina. Not for a moment. To the outside world, she was simply the heartbroken sister, grieving, devastated, and utterly shattered by the tragic and sudden death of her so-called sister-in-law, a woman whose life had been defined by chaos, manipulation, and destruction. Kristina played her part with flawless conviction. She stood at Ava's memorial in somber black, her eyes red and swollen from what appeared to be days of inconsolable weeping. She clutched Sunny's hand as if seeking strength, offered comforting words to Trina through trembling lips, and whispered solemn eulogies about forgiveness and loss. She even lit a candle in Ava's memory, letting a single tear fall down her cheek as the flame flickered in the still air of the chapel. But behind that grief-stricken facade, beneath the mask of a mourning daughter, hid a darker truth, a hidden satisfaction she could barely contain. There was no sorrow behind her eyes. What shimmered instead was a quiet, poisonous sense of triumph. Kristina had done what no one else dared. She had taken matters into her own hands and delivered justice the only way she believed Ava would ever receive it, through death. Ava was gone forever, and Kristina had buried the last of her mistakes with her. Long before the final blow was dealt, Kristina had carried within her a growing storm of hatred, an emotional wound that never healed. From the moment Morgan died, her world had changed forever. She had always suspected that Ava played a far more sinister role in her brother's demise than anyone was willing to acknowledge. Rumors had swirled. Whispers that Ava had tampered with Morgan's medication, replacing his bipolar meds with placebos that eventually unraveled his already fragile mental state. When he died in that fiery explosion, the loss was unbearable, but the idea that someone, a familiar face within their circle, might have facilitated his downfall made the grief venomous. Kristina's pain transformed into a cold, unrelenting obsession. And Ava, cool, unapologetic, and forever circling the edges of their lives like a ghost in red lipstick, seemed to carry on, untouched. She had slithered her way out of scandal after scandal, surviving betrayals, court battles, heartbreaks, and enemies who wanted her dead. But to Kristina, Ava's greatest crime wasn't simply what she did to Morgan, it was the way she kept returning to disrupt their lives, as if nothing could ever hold her accountable. The trauma continued to mount. Kristina blamed Ava for the twisted custody war over Avery, for Sunny's spiraling breakdowns, and, worst of all, for the devastating accident that led to the loss of Kristina's unborn child, a tragedy that ripped through her and Molly's lives like a blade. Though there had never been hard proof that Ava orchestrated that moment, Kristina's mind had already decided. It was Ava. It had always been Ava. Over the years, Kristina watched Ava live freely. Loved and feared in equal measure, while she herself carried the weight of heartbreak and loss. The bitterness festered. The rage settled into her bones. And eventually, it became too much to contain. She planned, waited, watched. And when the time was right, she struck with the same cold finality that Ava had always shown others. Now, with Ava gone, Kristina felt a twisted sense of peace. The ghosts of the past had been silenced. Morgan, her unborn child, even Sunny's suffering, all of it had been avenged in her mind. She had erased the source of their torment. No remorse. No guilt, only clarity. Her hands were clean in the eyes of the world, her secret buried as deeply as Ava's body. But in Port Charles, even the deepest secrets have a way of clawing their way back to the surface. And while Kristina basked in the quiet victory of a flawless crime, she had yet to understand the true cost of her revenge. Because the darkness she unleashed in silence may someday come for her, in the one form she can't escape, her own conscience. Kristina's hatred for Ava ran deeper than most could begin to comprehend, and it extended far beyond the tragedy of Morgan's death. One memory in particular haunted Kristina like a recurring nightmare, the night she lost her unborn child. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, a quiet evening with Molly. A moment to breathe amidst the chaos of Port Charles. But everything changed in a single instant, a shattered window, a scream, the sickening sound of glass breaking and bodies hitting the ground. Kristina fell, and with her, the fragile life she carried was lost forever. To this day, no one could definitively say what caused the window to break. What triggered the accident that sent her plummeting from the upper floors of that hotel? But Kristina never had any doubt. In her mind, Ava was behind it. Whether by manipulation, sabotage, or sheer indifference, Ava had engineered that moment, or allowed it to happen, and it had cost Kristina more than she could bear. From that point forward, Ava's name became synonymous with grief. Every time Kristina heard her voice, saw her smile, or watched her walk freely through town, she was reminded of what had been taken from her. It wasn't just the fall. Ava had long been a destructive force in Kristina's life, indirectly and directly tearing through the people she loved. She had once nearly destroyed Sunny in a bitter custody battle over Avery. Playing dirty with legal loopholes and emotional manipulation, dragging him through the mud just to get her way. And when Sunny collapsed in his own home, clutching his chest in agony from his damaged heart, Ava had merely stood by and watched, cold, calculating, her face devoid of sympathy. That image had burned itself into Kristina's memory. A permanent scar. And yet, Ava continued on. She was a woman who survived everything, attempted murders, public disgrace, broken relationships, and more. She wielded beauty like a weapon and charm like a shield, wrapping herself in power and darkness. In Port Charles, many feared Ava, and some admired her. But only Kristina saw her for what she truly was, a poison slowly seeping into the veins of everyone she touched. That's why Kristina believed it had to be her. She had waited too long for justice. And it had never come. So she would take it herself. Her first attempt, however, had been a bitter, humiliating failure. Fueled by rage and grief, Kristina concocted a plan that she thought was foolproof, a staged car accident that would target Ava, subtle enough to be dismissed as a random tragedy. She tampered with a vehicle Ava frequently used, setting up a scenario that would cause the car to lose control on the rain-slicked roads just outside town. She studied Ava's schedule, timed everything down to the minute, and waited. But fate had a cruel sense of irony. That night, Ava had unknowingly changed her plans. Rick and Liz, taking the car instead, became the unintended victims of Kristina's wrath. As the rain poured and visibility dropped, the cars swerved violently into the highway's median. The crash was brutal. Rick suffered multiple injuries, including a fractured spine, while Liz was left in a coma for days. The entire town was shaken. No one could understand what went wrong or why it had happened. Kristina was devastated, or so she pretended to be. She rushed to the hospital, stayed at Liz's bedside, and offered words of comfort to Rick's family. She even lit candles at the local chapel and joined prayer circles, presenting herself as a beacon of support. But inside, her heart was hollowed out by disappointment. Her plan had failed. Ava was still alive. And two people she cared about, or had at least never intended to hurt, were now paying for her mistake. That failure haunted her. It was a wake-up call. A reminder that revenge was a dangerous path not easily traveled. But rather than deter her, it only hardened her resolve. She would not make the same mistake again. The second time, she vowed. There would be no chance for Ava to escape, no opportunity for anyone else to get caught in the crossfire. It would be swift, silent, final. Kristina had already tried to play God once, and failed. But the next time, she would become something even more terrifying, the quiet executioner, hiding in plain sight. And this time, Ava wouldn't be so lucky. However, it was that very failure that shaped Kristina into something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. In the shadows of her guilt and rage, she matured, not with grace, but with calculation. The pain, the humiliation, and the unintended consequences of her first attempt hardened her. She became colder, more methodical, and far more patient. No longer was she driven by raw emotion. She was driven by strategy. She studied people. She learned how to manipulate the truth, how to mask her intentions with a carefully crafted smile, and how to weave grief into a convincing performance. Kristina became an expert in silence, hiding behind the shattered image of a daughter, a sister, a victim. When the right moment finally arrived, she didn't hesitate. Her second plan was executed with surgical precision. No accidents. No collateral damage. No mess. Ava was eliminated without a trace. No screams. No blood in the streets. Just a sudden disappearance, followed by a grim discovery days later that left the town in horror. Her body, found abandoned and desecrated in a landfill outside of Port Charles, sent shockwaves through the community. It was a death so brutal, so final, that even those who had once considered Ava an enemy were left stunned by the violence of it. The town reeled. Sunny was paralyzed by grief, unable to comprehend the loss. Nina's wails echoed through the hospital halls, the sound of a woman whose soul had been ripped apart. Trina, devastated, refused to believe what she had heard. Ava, proud, untouchable, indestructible Ava, was gone. What no one realized was that the monster they imagined must have committed the crime wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. It wasn't some criminal from Ava's checkered past or a rival with a score to settle. It was Kristina, the same Kristina who once wore her heart on her sleeve. The same girl they had always seen as emotional, tender, and fiercely loyal. The same young woman who had spent years trying to build a life beyond her family's dysfunction. She walked among them in the aftermath, her head bowed in mourning, her voice cracking with emotion as she spoke of Ava's tragic end. She brought food to grieving friends, lit candles at the chapel, and helped organize the memorial service. No one suspected a thing. She moved like a ghost through the chaos she had created. A quiet presence that blended into the sorrow around her. And yet, deep inside, Kristina carried a secret darker than any shadow cast over Port Charles. She had succeeded where others had failed. She had destroyed Ava, permanently. To her, it wasn't murder. It was balance. Retribution. A correction to a timeline that had gone wrong years ago when Morgan died and her child was lost. Ava had caused pain to so many and always walked away untouched. Not this time. But secrets have weight. And the one Kristina carried pressed against her chest like a stone, silent but suffocating. No one knew. No one even suspected. But secrets, no matter how deeply buried, always find a way to surface. As the town continued to mourn, Kristina drifted farther into the darkness of her own making. And though she told herself the story was over, that Ava was gone and peace had finally been restored, something in her soul knew better. Because in Port Charles, every action demands a reckoning. And eventually, even the most perfect crimes begin to crack. Whether through guilt, suspicion, or the slow unraveling of truth. The price always finds its way home. And for Kristina, the bill hadn't even begun to come due.